Let's do a quick book review. Did you enjoy your books? I know I asked you before, but when you're reading them, as you're getting to know the authors, some of you will resonate more with one and some with the other. And the reason why I gave you two is because culture is never a package deal. You can't enter into a new country and you see a list of rules on the wall in the airport that says, okay, American, or whatever you are, when you come here, don't do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. It's just this conglomeration of input from every angle. So I decided to give you two cultural teachers because both their books are brilliant. Half of the book overlaps one with the other. But one author will spend more time on one aspect of culture, while the other will spend time on another aspect. So as you read two of them, in a sense, you're getting a blended understanding of cross-cultural training and cross-cultural insight. So in the Ministering Cross-Culturally by Sherwood Lingenfelter, this is the one that we read the first chapter in. We did the introduction, which is very similar to what we talked about in class. But let's review the questions just quickly so that you'll have a chance to ask or have more insight, or we can dialogue on this for a moment. The first question, this would be on your test on Populi, was, I wrote this so weird that I can't even read it myself. Isn't that crazy when you write, you can't even read your own notes? What is the key purpose in working with the model of basic values? That was the question. What is the key purpose of working with a model of basic values? In this book, you're going to be challenged by anthropological vocabulary. We can simplify all this down to what do you do to make this work is really what he's asking. The answer to it, and almost all of you got it right, what is the key purpose of working with a cross-cultural situation and being sensitive? It is to equip people to follow what the scripture says about Christianity and how others, or how we should as Christians relate with others. So the key purpose of the book was so that we can understand ourselves, understand God's word, so that those doors can open and we can truly become cross-cultural workers. Another answer, which was really well put, this is one of the students, I just quoted it, was to point out our personal and cross-cultural roots of tension. Now, you know, when they use the word tension, the word I would use is frustration. It's the same thing. It's this grinding on you, like, why are they doing that? Why am I doing that? Now, it's not just easy to live in this culture. There's a sense of tension that's being drawn and being pulled on and creating a feeling of a discomfort. To reduce frustration as much as possible is the way that I summarize it. I brought it down. Now, I know that's a lot of just small, short quotes. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but is there any questions about that first question? Did you guys go through that? Did you read it? Did you understand it? You felt good about it? Okay. And you gotta answer quickly, so I'm just going to keep moving. Second question, what happens when you identify your own value biases, or what are you biased to? Meaning, what do you prefer and what do you not prefer? What happens when we identify that? That is an opportunity for us to increase in sensitivity. So when I realize I like it this way and somebody else likes it the exact opposite. For example, I like really spicy food, right? My daughter, which is here, so I'll embarrass her, she hates spicy food. Only my son will eat spicy food with me, right? So if I say, let's go to my favorite restaurant, my wife and my two girls go, oh, Dad, I don't want to go there. I'm like, you're breaking my heart. What does it have to be my birthday for you guys to go to a restaurant that I like? What do we just do? We just realize I like food spicy. They don't. And when we're trying to sit down and share a meal together, if I die to myself and go to the food that they like, then the tension is lessened. But if I say, I want this food because that's the way that I like it, what am I creating? Tension and frustration. So when I realize that I prefer things this way, and I use a silly example like the kind of food, I prefer it this way, I begin to look at my entire life and realize I have a list of 100 things that I prefer, right? Not just my food, the temperature of the room, the kind of clothes I wear, the kind of people I meet. There's 1,000 things that I could list out. I like it this way when half the other world likes it over here. And the Lord says, leave that and go to them. What do I need to do? Become sensitive. The last thing a missionary wants to be is rigid, meaning inflexible. You cannot bend something that's rigid. Rigid is like a steel pipe. The Lord wants to make you totally flexible, like a rubber band. So, in the chapter, we started to look at in chapter 1, incarnation. When you were reading the beginning of chapter 1, he talked about, this is the author, Lingenfelter, he arrived in the island of Yap. Did you guys look up where Yap was? Nobody looked up Yap? Oh, come on. It's like this little bitty micro island in the middle of nowhere. So when he landed on the island and he looked at it, it's beautiful, like one of the most gorgeous places you'd ever want to be. And he said to the local person, where can I live? And the local guy said, you got 2 choices. Now you remember the story? 2 choices. First choice, he walked him out on that perfect beach. That beach you see in every screensaver, in every postcard, the sun setting and the ocean's coming in, and it's just like the most serene place you could ever want to be. And to every Westerner, that's ideal. Why? Because we're individualistic and we like to be isolated, alone, quiet. Don't bug me, I won't bug you. This is where I want to be. This is where Jesus is. That's what I say to myself. And then the translator or the local guy just gently nudged him and said, if you want to learn our language, it's never going to happen in the resort. It's going to happen where? About 200 or 300 feet, not far, into the jungle. And when you go 100 feet into a tropic jungle, the ocean is like gone from your sight. It's just thick with trees and bugs and humidity. Have you guys ever walked through a jungle? It looks really cool in a photograph. 10 feet in, you feel like I'm going to die. Most people that live in the tropics, they build their houses right in the middle of that. And I think, what in the world? And then not just the environment, the natural environment, then the people. They live side by side. It's loud. It's crazy. There's trash everywhere. Kids are running around. They don't have much sanitation. I'll just leave it gentle in that way. It is, in every part of my Western desires, repulsive. Totally repulsive. So I have what my greatest desire would ever be, the ideal of every retired American, or what I would never want to do. And the missionary says, it's not about being isolated, it's about being with the people. And so Lingenfelter and his wife realized, we've got to go there. I've got to shatter my Western, be individual, and I need to go become part of a group. I need to be incarnated with those people. Did you guys all want to live on the beach? Am I the only one? Okay, yeah, we're all with you on that. Okay. Dirty, loud, crazy. True community is found in the insanity of that. The next question was, what does it mean that Jesus was 200% person? What does it mean that Jesus was 200% person? Now, almost every student put he was heavenly minded. And we changed the question around a few times because we noticed the first 2 tests that were taken, they got it wrong. So Christine and I tried to rewrite it so it was even easier to understand. The answer was that he was 100% God and 100% human. 200% means he was totally heavenly minded and totally earthly incarnated, right? So it wasn't just he was thinking up here, he was living in the most simple human way while his mind was also in heaven. So he was 200%. He was both all God and all man at the same time. The next question, our personal culture is individual and unique. It is a product of what 3 things? Do you guys remember this question? Where does your culture come from? And we covered this in our first class. We covered it first in the next one. Your family, your parents, for how long? How long did the author say? About the first 6 years. You have no other input. Even if you have friends outside, they don't affect you for the first 6 years. That's a lot of molding, isn't it? 6 years. How many days is that? Somebody want to do the math for me? How many? 3,000 days of being molded by 2 people, mom and dad and maybe brother and sister. That's a lot of input. That's where the primary core of your culture is built, those first 6 years with family. Number 2, what was it? Outside the home? the local community. We could call it the school. For a lot of kids, it could be the playground because that's where all kids go to. They create a playground in the middle of a dirt field in Africa. They don't have a lot of schools, so the kids are always with each other. So you got family. Then you have the local community, called that the tribe. It could be called the city. It could be, just a general area that you're living in. And that would also, if you want to include more developed areas, your school teacher. School teachers heavily influence kids, don't they? Now, it's rare to have a school teacher that teaches something different than your mother, isn't it? You would think most schools, especially primary age schools from first grade through like seventh grade, most of those school teachers are from that culture. So in a sense, it's just a further development of what you've had at home with a couple different changes and twists on viewpoint because your teachers might have more education or they might have had other experiences, so they'll add to it. But it's the same as family, it's just now broadened. And then the third way that our culture is shaped is through our acceptance or rejecting of the ideas of our parents, our school teachers, and our local community. And then last week when we did our introduction, we talked about our country being another factor, or nationality. In the book, he didn't go into nationality until much later in the chapter. In the beginning, he only talked about parents, community, and the accepting and the rejecting. Now, why did he bring up the accepting and the rejecting? Because each person loves parts of their parents' culture, and then they reject others. I have 3 children. They're totally, completely different. My one daughter that's not here, so I'll embarrass her because I won't embarrass my daughter that is here. My middle daughter, Lila, she hates change. If I tell her that, like, for example, I might change cars, she's like, Dad, you can't change cars. That'd be the worst thing ever because I won't feel at home in that new car. I'm like, why do you love things like so connected? Well, my other kids are like, yeah, Dad, it'd be awesome if you got a new car. That's something simple like that. Sometimes she goes into like this she kind of melts down and she kind of, goes into herself. She kind of goes into her shell if we change something small because she likes things a certain way. While another child loves change. My mom and dad are talking about change all the time. We raised them in Africa. We raised them in Asia. We raised them in America. My kids have been raised in 3 cultures. They should love change. Some of them accept, some of them reject. So even though you might be, in a sense, chipped away by the same craftsmen, your parents and your community, each person will come out differently. So it's not that we all have identical cultures. We all share similar home cultures, and then we individually create our own likes or dislikes of that culture, and then we gravitate as we get older to people that share our likes and dislikes. Our clothing style, what we want to do. Like, for example, I had never, ever hung out with jocks. Can I use the term jocks? Ever in my life. And my mom forced me to play soccer for it was like 7 years of torture. Torture. So I know every sport, I've played them all, I've been on this field, I hate them. I hate them. The moment I could run from sports, I did. And I never looked back. Ever. And I used to make fun of the jocks at my school. The punk rocker guys would get invited to the jocks. So that's what there's little subcultures, right? So even though we're all Americans, my brother plays every sport and he plays it incredible. And all of his kids play every sport. My kids don't play any sports, right? Because even 2 brothers create 2 subcultures that then, in a sense, go out. So culture is similar, but yet complex. It's together, but yet slightly separated. So we have overarching cultures and then little subcultures within. But what does culture do? Culture gives us a way that we can live and all feel comfortable with each other, right? You guys watched the Super Bowl on Sunday? Did you watch it? Anybody watch it? Okay, I didn't even know it was happening until it started. And somebody said, are you going to watch the Super Bowl? I'm like, oh, is that today? And then this other guy, and I might have told you the story, I think I did. This other guy at Starbucks, he goes, are you related to Peyton Manning? Straight up, and I'm all, I've been asked that question like 3 or 4 times. So I went online to see what Peyton Manning looks like, because I have no idea. That's how much I don't watch sports, right? And then I realized, well, yeah, if I was 6'6" and my neck was as big as a tree, and yeah, then maybe I could be related to him. So the next time somebody asked me, are you watching the game? I'm like, no, my brother's playing in it. It's totally fine. I'll figure out what happens later. Subcultures, right? Some love sports. Some are like, whatever. Who cares if it even happens? But what does culture do for us? It gives us something that we all get together and do. How many Super Bowl parties were there? Oh my God. Everywhere. Everywhere. Even our youth group got together and all the girls were like, we're going to go to talk to the girls because we don't even want to watch the game. Culture gives us something where we all find common ground. So I might be a little bit different. We might be different ages. We might have different likes or dislikes. But culture allows us, in a sense, to synchronize our lives. I know what to do and when to do it. Even if I'm a little different than you, it gives us commonality. So culture is a comfortable thing. Now in that, it was interesting, in Lingenfelter's book, he talked about how a Muslim would view religious worship. From a Muslim cultural viewpoint, what would a Muslim do when they enter into their place of worship? It's not called the church, is it? No, what's it called? It's called the mosque. They don't have a pastor, they have a imam, right? And they don't read the Bible, they read the Quran, okay? Their leader, spiritual leader, is not Jesus, it's Muhammad, okay? I'm just working together, see if you guys are awake. So a Muslim would walk into his place of worship, and his imam wouldn't get up and open the Bible. That just doesn't happen. That's not the way they do it. There is a Quran, and it's sitting up on this perfect pedestal because they believe that literally God is in the pages, so you can't put it on the ground or anywhere else. So there's a book there, but they don't teach from it line upon line, precept upon precept. That's for different times. When you enter a Muslim place of worship, what's the first thing you do? Take off your shoes. Now, can you imagine going to a Christian church and just having shoes everywhere? What was the response? Ooh, right? Okay. First time I went to India, they have the same culture, and they were all born again Hindus, and the Hindus take their shoes off as well. So the Christians that were once Hindus kept that culture. It's not a problem. So I walk into this Indian church, and there's literally 1,000 pairs of sandals outside. And I'm thinking, how do you even find them? They all look the same. They're all red or blue or green. How do they even know? And then do they just put on a pair that fits and then walk away and no one cares? And I'm trying to like untie my shoes and go through this whole thing. So now, when I travel, I wear shoes that can come off and on without any ties. Because if I'm in Africa, I can take my shoes off. When I'm in Asia, I can take my shoes off. In their places of worship. In America, we would never do that. Can you imagine walking into a mega church? Just feels strange even thinking about it. What happens when we as Christians try to lay our culture on Muslims, Middle Easterns, Asians? What do we create? We create massive tension. So the purpose of our book is to show us that we have what we call cultural blinders. We only see the world around us through our culture. We're going to, in this class, step back, in a sense, take off our cultural blinders and realize there's 100 other ways that it can be done, and most of those ways are found in the Bible. Our culture today, our modern culture, is not biblical in the sense of historic biblical living. Now, we might apply the same teachings that Jesus gave, but we don't walk for hundreds of miles. We don't wear sandals. We don't wear, as men, skirts. You guys know that in biblical times, men wore skirts. If I wear a skirt today, am I labeled like a born-again believer? No, I'm labeled crazy or somebody that's going another direction. I'll just be really gentle about that. So when I was in India and I was talking to the pastor, I said, what does a pastor wear when he teaches? And he showed me a skirt. It was like this long thing that wrapped around and you tie it, and there was this whole way to tie it. You had to like throw the fabric a certain way and then do it really quick. It took me like an hour to figure out how to even get this thing to stay on. It's a little scary. Then the shirt was similar to the shirt I'm wearing now, but it was one single color. So I had this single colored shirt with this cool like Indian collar that just came around, and then I had this single color skirt on. And they said, if you're going to preach in our pulpit, you have to wear that. Now my brother is a senior pastor. He was with me when I came walking out. Do you have any idea what he did? Oh man, not just the pictures. My brother used to tell me, I hate you so much that at any moment that I can punch you, I'm going to. He's like, what are you wearing? I'm like, bro, you're my senior pastor. I'm going to be preaching. You can't wear that when you preach. Now, of course, we were joking. We were in private. But that's what Americans do, isn't it? But the agent said, Robbie, if you want to fit in, you're going to wear clothes that in your culture is considered homosexual. Here it's considered respectable and spiritual. Talk about a challenge. Okay? One little story, just so I don't get myself too in trouble. I was warned by the Indian pastors, if you do that, you have to make sure that you tie your skirt the right way. We had a white guy come, he didn't tie his skirt the right way, and as he was walking, he was all Pentecostal, he stepped on one part of his skirt and he walked right out of it. I just imagine 400 students, guys and girls, filling the room, and there's the white guy on the stage with no skirt on, just his like skivvies or his shorts. Talk about, how do you recover from that? Right? So I learned very quick, you can put a belt on and then loop it over so it looks like it's cool, but it's like fully secured. People worship in different ways. We have cultural blinders, and the cultural blinders keep us from becoming proper ambassadors. An ambassador must fit into his new culture, understand his new culture, and represent God in the right way. That's what we want to do in this class. We want to take off those cultural blinders. And then in our next book, Cross-Cultural Connection, this is going to be covered more in depth next week. We only did the introduction on this one, or the preface, pretty much. And it pretty much said the same thing as the other preface. I just wanted you to read it and get a feel from it. Get ready for next week. When you read the story of the monkey, some of you guys have read the monkey and the fish. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Make sure you do next week's reading in such a short, little, concise way. This guy just turns my world upside down. And I think I love these books. I love these things. Now, any questions on that at all? Yes?
Is there any chance we can review our answers and see which ones we missed?
Yeah, we can't access them after we've turned it in.
You know, you could ask the office. That's like a technical question that has to do with the computer system. I have no idea. I know for sure that when we check them, we either give you 25, 50, 75, or 100% per answer. And so you'd have to ask the office how to see that. I don't know. And I can't see what you see. So I don't know. All I see is my side of it, which is like creating it, and then what you write. But once I hit OK, I don't know what it looks like.
Okay.
So yeah, just call the office. Okay? But it's a good question.
Yeah, we'd like to have the questions too for our own research.
I'm sorry?
We'd like to have the questions as well for our own research.
Right. Yeah, so ask the office. That's a technical thing. And I do enjoy having that computerized. It sure makes things easier, but we still need to work through some kinks in that. Yes, ma'am?
Just a second. If you guys have questions on that, you guys can see me, because I can access that.
Okay, I'll come see you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, great. Yeah, Shane will do it for you.
Housekeeping.
Yeah, I already planned when Rob was talking. I knew I was going to come.
Just a housekeeping note.
Yeah.
If you guys have any questions on your test, on your grades, you can come see me. I can access that information, and I can answer any of those questions.
Great. Okay.
Is there any chance you can change it so that the answers are visible to the students after the test is done?
Yeah.
So they won't have to come bug you every week?
Yeah, we'll have to ask the office about that.
That's something that Shane can change to TA.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll have to ask the office. It's a technical thing. So we're working out some other stuff too, is to give more people more access to more stuff. A quick review. Last week we talked about culture and cultural sensitivity. And we asked ourselves, why should we be sensitive to culture? Remember the question? Very profound, very clear. Because when we are sensitive, we begin to earn respect. When we earn respect, we create openness and a willingness in people to listen. And so respect goes two ways. We respect them, they respect us. The more I respect them, the more they respect me. I can't be an ambassador and I can't communicate a message unless there's respect coming both ways. So if I'm not sensitive to somebody's culture and I'm offending them constantly, I'll never be an ambassador. And this is simply what we talked about last week. This is stuff that we've already covered. I just wanted to bring you up to speed if your mind was overwhelmed throughout the whole week and your other classes and such. In review, continuing, respect creates trust. Trust creates friendship. Friendship creates discipleship. Respect creates trust, friendship, which then finally leads to discipleship. Love cannot be silenced. When someone knows that you love them, you could say one word or 1,000 words and they'll just hear it. I've read so many biographies of people that said I was hardened to the gospel. I was a radical Muslim, radical Hindu, a radical atheist, a radical agnostic. But when I saw that love from that person, it just so broke my heart that I had to listen, I had to hear. Love cannot be silenced. And so before we talk about Jesus as the ideal missionary, I want to show you one of my favorite videos of the worst failure that's ever taken place. And the people that made this, it's another short-term missions agency, they made this just to mock the way that most Western Americans do missions. We go out with this mentality that we're the saviors, and that our way of life is the only way of life, and that our way of life is the best way of life. Now, we've never taken the Bible and truly laid it out upon our culture, or we would realize that most of our culture has got some major issues, even within the church, if we really look at the Bible clearly. Because we read the Bible with what? Cultural blinders. And we read it with an American mentality. And so we go into these other countries and say, whatever we do here, it's the best way to do it. So this video, as you're watching it, just think, have I ever been a Viking? Have I ever come in and just pounded people to be well? Even if I do it in love, have I ever been a Viking? And so the slogan is, be like Jesus, not like a Viking. Let's watch this.
I am Svart, son of Scott, of the house of Sklood. We come from a land far beyond the great sea. We have heard that this is a place of great darkness, of frail, powerless people. We have come to help. The people of this realm have many problems. Most of them are bewitched by these small, flat magic stones. It's really quite sad. The men don't work. There's no pillaging. No plundering, no marauding. They just sit, enslaved by these strange glowing devices, forced to endlessly tap, 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 over and over, with a meaningless existence. Breaks your heart. Be free! Be free, brothers! When you can help someone less fortunate than you, there's no better feeling. It's why we came. They need to learn a better way. Our way. They need help with things that just seem so basic to us. These poor, wretched urchins are starving. I look like this is what passes for a meal here. This, a meal. We can help.
What is that?
Seal blood. She's moved to tears. You see how great the need is here. Look at this guy. So cute, but so weak. He should be able to take down a full-grown whale by now. We do this thing called VBS. It's been a huge success. The kids love Viking Battle School. Look at these rags. These people are truly destitute. How will this in battle ever stop Albert from spilling their innards? That's why we've handed out over 100 Bridget. Just look at them. They've never seen such nice clothing. We've accomplished so much in just a few days. We helped someone who couldn't get his horseless cart to bed. We've taught them better ways to use their unusually small fields. And as on most of these trips, lots of painting. These guys literally have no idea how to discourage their enemies from attacking. This has been an amazing trip, and look how happy they are. They just love us so much. And just because we are vastly superior to them in every possible way, doesn't mean that we haven't gotten as much as we've given. When we can bless them with the simple things that we take for granted, it makes you feel good. Wow. Thanks for the catapult. That's great.
Absolutely brilliant. when I saw that, I thought, I can't even teach it better. I mean, how could you even explain it better? That's exactly what a single-viewed culture does. They go in and they say, we do it this way, and you guys are just wrong. Whatever you do is wrong. Your food's wrong, your clothes are wrong, what you're doing is wrong, your way of life is wrong, how much you do in the day or not do. Didn't you love it when they grabbed that guy's iPhone or that girl's iPhone? And what was the word he used? Bewitched. Now, isn't that, now if you came to America and you'd never seen an iPhone, what would you think?
Oh, yeah.
That there's some kind of a sorcery spell. And all the kids are like this. Kids that should be sitting around talking at a table, like being social, like normal, and they're... You ever seen two people text on the couch together? Drives me insane, right? They're bewitched by it. I thought, that is the most brilliant way to say it. And so coming from an outside culture, that's exactly what I want to do. Take an axe and cut it up. Jesus did not do that. He did not come into a culture and just, in a sense, scorch the earth. You know the scorched earth policy? Just burn and kill and destroy and bulldoze, and then we'll rebuild it the way we want it. That's what most people do. When the British, let me just go back many hundreds of years, when the British went into a culture, they simply said, you're not developed, you're ignorant, you're naive, you're primitive. And so they would destroy that culture. They would do their best, and then they would make the world England. And when I heard them talking that way in an old book about we're going to make the world England, the Lord spoke to me and said, Rob, you still do the same thing today. You want to make the world Californian. And you want to put your church there and your way of life there and all your stuff. That's not what I'm doing. Jesus was the perfect missionary. He came as a man, as a baby, and he incarnated. He became part of a world, and he became totally like them in every possible way. And so now we want to spend our time today discussing Jesus as the perfect missionary. Now, this word incarnation, I think, is probably one of our most important words that we're going to use in this class. To incarnate means to be born into and to become totally like. So it's not you're trying to be like them, or you spend a few weeks like them and then you change back to your original. To incarnate means to become totally in their world. And the actual concept would be for something spiritual to become fleshly. So when we think about Jesus not having what we would think of as, in the earthly sense, a physical body in heaven, when he comes to the earth, he becomes incarnated as a single, limited human. So he's totally God and he's totally human. Now this is the question. How did Jesus come to the earth? Did he come as an adult? Right? And you guys remember, you read the book, you would understand, he came as an infant. When I was living in a foreign culture, a refugee camp in Africa, the culture drove me so crazy that I would ask the Lord constantly, every day, Lord, how do I become like them? How do I become like them? And then over about a year, I started to really see in the Word, the Lord says, you truly act like a child. You come with nothing on your mind. You have no expectations. You have no culture that's your own. Now, that's almost impossible to do. I know that I'm talking about something very, very impractical for most adults. But you come as such a child that you live with them and you learn everything from scratch. In a sense, you come with what we call a blank slate. And you let the ladies in the culture totally invest into you and teach you. You let the men invest into you and teach you. You begin to learn a language. You start off like an infant. Now, for most of us that are sent into the mission field, we're sent there because we want to be leaders. God's called us to be leaders. God's called us to be ambassadors. Most ambassadors that we know of are of a very mature age, highly educated, and they have a clear concept of what they're going to do. So they go and they learn a little. This would be a human ambassador from a normal earthly government. They learn a little about that other government, enough to interact, but they never truly become like them. But the spiritual ambassador, what we want to do is exactly what Jesus did, totally becoming like the people. He looked like them, he talked like them, and he acted like them. So much so that when the Pharisees wanted to arrest them, you remember the story? They said to Judas, show us who he is, because they couldn't even pick him out of the crowd. He didn't stand out. He wasn't what they say in East Africa, Mzungu. Mzungu means white man. It actually doesn't mean that. It means the one that runs in circles. It's actually the clear translation is the person that never sits, doesn't talk, doesn't build relationships. He just runs in circles all day long doing something. That's what mzungu really means. But what we say is, oh, they're calling us a white man. No, what they're doing is they're describing what the white man does. He's never part of a community. He's always doing his own thing. The other word they would use for us is hippo. Every once in a while, and I'll bring it up later in the cultures class, is they would say to me, Rob, stop being a hippo. I'm like, okay, how am I supposed to interpret that? Now, if I was to call, I won't even pick the ladies because you'll think something weird. I'm going to call Tim the hippo. He knew it was coming. He's right there. I know Tim well. If I said to you, Tim, don't be a hippo, what would be the first thing you think I'm telling you that you are? Big, fat, slow, and dumb. Okay? What they mean by it has got nothing to do with the size of the animal, but it's what the animal does. When a hippo becomes afraid, he rushes to the water and he tramples everything in his way. So what they say is, you white people get these ideas in your mind that this is what needs to be done in this community, and then you just rush in so strong and so severe that you literally trample on people to get done what you think needs to get done. And normally, our culture doesn't want what you're doing. They don't need what you're doing. It's like building the people, what was it, a catapult? Thanks for the catapult. Like, you did all that to build me a catapult and deface the outside of my church, right? Where I got to call somebody in to repaint my church. That's what we do. We act like hippos. If it's my way, it's the right way, and we run everybody over on the way in. Jesus was never that way. Jesus incarnated himself to a point where he referred to himself as the Son of God a little, and mostly John referred to him as that. But when he spoke of himself, what did he call himself? The Son of Man, because he became 100% human, 100% Jewish, 100% enculturated into the world that he was in. So in the book, Ministering Cross-Culturally, it says, oh, you know what? We already covered that part. I'll cruise past it. It was the whole concept of coming into a church and taking your shoes off if you're a Muslim and not doing that if you were a Christian, and that cultural blindness. Jesus never had that cultural blindness. He learned from infancy everything that needed to be learned. Now, when Jesus entered the world as a human, as a man, and he began to do ministry, who did he minister to primarily? What culture? What people group? To the Jews. And you remember what he said when some Gentiles came to him. He said, I haven't come here to minister to the Gentiles. I came here for what? The lost sheep of Israel. So Jesus had a very particular purpose. The city of Jerusalem, the community of Galilee, and primarily that little area called Israel. Israel's not a big place. It's one of the smallest states in America. Is the same size as Israel. I think it's like a sixth or a tenth the size of our state, California. It's a small place. It's no bigger than like Los Angeles and Orange County combined, maybe San Diego. So Jesus said, I'm here to minister to this small little group, knowing that he was going to start a fire in those people's hearts and send them into all the world. So the long-term goal for Jesus wasn't just to minister to the Jews, it was minister to the whole world, but he knew that his particular role was not to learn a bunch of other languages, was not to become culturally sensitive to a whole other group of people, was to be totally Jewish, to minister to Jews. And when I think of that, I think of a senior pastor of a church that's called to a specific area, and he just becomes totally like those people. And you can take him on a short-term trip, and he'll do his best to, maybe move in and out of a new culture, but his job is not to learn how to speak a foreign language, because his job is here in this church. But he creates missionaries that then go out and then enculturate themselves. And so Jesus was 100% Jew, to the point that when he spoke to the woman at the well, John chapter 4, verse 9, the Samaritan woman said, how is it that you, a Jew, ask a drink of me, a woman of Samaria? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. So there was this cultural thing going on between Jews and Samaritans. And we all understand that story. We understand that concept. Jesus was so Jewish that everybody thought of him not as the Son of God that kind of floated on the earth, but as a normal Jewish man that worked hard, that walked, that talked, that ate their food, that acted like them. But then in the same book, that was in John 4, the Samaritan woman, in the same book, Jesus claimed to be 100% God. In John chapter 10, verse 33, Jesus is arguing with the Pharisees, and Jesus said, "Why do you stone me?" Or "Why do you want to kill me?" After this big long argument about, Jesus called them the children of the devil. So you can imagine they were a little upset. So Jesus says, "Why do you want to stone me?" The Jews answered him and said, "It is not for the good works that you are doing that we want to stone you, but for blasphemy. Because you, being a man," you see how they understood him? "You being a man, make yourself God." So he was totally man, he was totally God at the same time. Jesus was 100% God, 100% Jewish. Therefore, he was a 200% person. So the incarnation, 100% God and 100% man. Now, when we think of God becoming a man, I don't know if we really grasp how much he set aside, how much he left behind, how much he gave up to enter our world. Not until eternity will we even begin to understand. And I'm not sure how we learn in eternity. I do know in 1 Corinthians 13, it says, when we see him, we will be like him, right? We will know him as he knows us. It's that whole thing of the end of the whole concept of love, and when all these things fade away, love will remain, and then we'll have full knowledge. I'm not sure how we learn, but I'll tell you this. When we see him in eternity, it's like a light will go on in our minds, and we'll begin to truly understand all that he left to become a man on this earth and to truly live in such a way. Turn with me to John chapter 1. And we're going to read just 2 verses, talk about it just for a moment, and then after the break, we're going to break up into groups. And we're going to have a group class discussion. It means 4 or 5 groups within the class, and we're going to discuss these things. So as we're reading this, think about how you would communicate this to somebody else. Think about the way that you understand who Jesus is. Think about how you have perceived the Son of God and the Son of Man as one perfect 200% person. And so we all know the context of John chapter 1. John is explaining that the Word became flesh, that the light has shined into the darkness, that Jesus has come as a human. And so in John chapter 1 verse 14, the author John says, "The Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen his glory, the glory as of the only Son of the Father, full of grace and truth." And so here we see that Jesus, when he stepped into this world, he became a total infant. The Word became flesh. Now imagine being the creator of all things. I know we can't even grasp that, but just think about the enormous universe that we can see, and how much more is there that we can't see. From our limited ability to understand, our limited ability to see with the technology that we have now that is 1,000,000 times more advanced than it was 100 years ago, and we're barely scratching the surface. The one that spoke all of that into existence became flesh. By the Holy Spirit was put into Mary, into Mary's womb. It says the Holy Spirit put Jesus as a fetus into Mary's womb, and he grew there for 9 months. How long was he there? 9 months. You ever wrestled with studying the Bible and training and spending time? You think the God-man was inside of a woman, a human woman, in a primitive society for 9 months, and then he was born. Have you ever witnessed a birth? I'm not going to get all graphic on you, but you understand what I'm talking about. You witnessed the birth? That's how God decided to come into this world. In a mess. In a manger, of all places. Freezing cold, with nothing around them. I mean, we've seen the movies and they glamorize the whole birth. The birth was done in a stable. I used to take care of cows and horses when I was a kid. I had to wear boots, right? Rubber boots went to my knees because of the amount of stuff I had to walk through just to get to the cows and their feeding trough and all that. And that's where God was born? Wow. And as he came into this world as a helpless infant. He did not come as a fully grown, mature adult. He didn't come as a leader. He came as a learner, completely incarnated into humanity. He had to learn a language. You ever consider that? The one that knows all things humbled himself to the point where he babbled like a child. And his mom had to teach him, this is how you say yes, this is how you say no, this is how you say I want, this is how you say I don't want, however they would speak it. His mom had to teach him that. God had to learn to speak a new language. Learning a new language is the hardest thing any adult will ever do. Just know that. When God calls you to a new place, even if it's a language like French and you want to speak it and you love it and it sounds exciting, it still is going to rack your brain. Rack your brain. The people I work with, they speak almost 10 languages. So as I tried to learn one of them, they said, Rob, don't even try. Because I'm dyslexic, which means language learning is not my strong suit. Don't even try. We've all learned English as our third, fourth, or fifth language. English is like way down the line for them. So if you just read very slowly and use the NIV Bible, which is a simplified version, and you speak to us in that Chuck Smith speed, right? J. Vernon McGee style, we'll understand. I couldn't even learn a new language. And so here, the Son of God doesn't come as a foreigner. He becomes one of them to the point where he's totally a part of them. Studying their language, studying their culture. Where did Jesus learn Hebrew culture? For many years in his home with his mother and his father. You remember the story? He was about 12 years old. They went down to Jerusalem and he was lost. And his mother and father were all anxious. Where did you go? Right? Why? Because that was their little boy. That was the little boy, right? My daughter wants to get her license and she wants to just drive off. I mean, my heart's pounding. That's my little girl. You guys have daughters? You understand what I'm talking about? That's my baby girl. Now, she's going to be an adult and she's very mature and she's going to do great. But as a father, I'm freaking out right now, right? That's my little girl. She's going to drive off. She's going to be fine. But as a father, I'm starting to lose it. The Son of God humbled himself and became obedient to his parents over and over and over. And at certain ages, during their bar mitzvahs and their entrance into manhood, then he took those steps of authority and he began to become more influential, but he took it at their pace, in their culture, totally being like them. He didn't fight it. He didn't rush it. He took his time and he became like them. He learned their lifestyle with those people for over 30 years. When God first called me to the mission field, the first thing I said was, why would I delay 1 second? I heard his call today. I'm going to get on a plane tomorrow. Right? I heard his call today. I'm going to get on a plane tomorrow. Next week, or this week coming up, as you're reading from Cross-Cultural Connection, you're going to hear the author say, and I'm going to say it to you now so that we hear it more than once, if we rush it, we will do more damage than good. And what the author says is, imagine if your medical doctor rushed his training. And he was all excited because there was a war going on and people were coming out of the battle and they needed to be dealt with right now. They were bleeding, they were hemorrhaging. This is an emergency, this is a crisis. We got to get out there and do it. Well, that's the way that I feel about missions. When I look at the unreached and I realize how many are dying, it's a crisis. Well, imagine I rush out there as a doctor and I start doing things where if I would have taken the time to learn how to do them right. Now, I'm not saying stay home in America for 8 years before you go to the mission field. I'm talking about like a year and really spend the time, maybe 2, depends on who you are and how far you have to go into a new culture. Take the time to learn, because if you rush out, you will do more damage than good. You will kill your patients spiritually when you want to heal them spiritually. Is that clear? I've been so guilty of rushing out without training and having the nationals that love God and they're patient pull me aside and say, and this is the word they use, this is a Swahili term, Mzungu poli poli. It means, white man, slow down. White man, slow down. Poli poli Mzungu, poli poli. They say it to me all the time. They still say it to me, right? And I'll laugh at them. I'll be like, oh, I'm so sorry. They're like, yeah, come on, Rob, slow it down. I want to rush in. I want to fix the issue, but I have no idea what's going on. I don't know the inner workings of the spiritual heart of those people in that culture. No idea. If I took the time to learn, then when I came in as an ambassador and I spoke things in the name of God, When I represented my Lord and my Savior, I would understand His will and His culture and then be able to apply it to this new culture. But if I rush in like just my own culture and not understand my new culture, I'll be a Viking. And I'll be feeding him what? Whale blubber. Did you notice that? This is the food you should want to eat. And she goes, what is it? And he goes, whale blubber. Now, a friend of mine, no joke, went to Alaska as a missionary. He got off the plane, these little seaplanes, gets off the seaplane. It's freezing cold, freezing. And he says to the lady at this little broken down little shack, what do you have to make me warm? And he's expecting hot tea, hot chocolate, hot tea, right? Coffee. Coffee is the word I'm looking for. He's expecting something hot. Is that what we would do in this culture? Now, if you go to Ireland, what do they give you? Probably some hard alcohol, right? Here's what she says. She goes, you know what you need? Whale blubber. And he's like, you're not serious. She takes her blender, which is this old beat up thing, all dirty. She does a whole scoop of ice, and you're like, ice, and a whole scoop of whale blubber, and she blends it. Now he tells me, he goes, Rob, I was trained in culture and all that, so I took it and I just chugged it down. He goes, every time that blubber went through my throat, I wanted to regurgitate it. No joke. I wanted to throw it. But within 5 minutes after I choked it down and held my mouth shut, my whole body got warm. And I realized the right way to start a day in this part of Alaska is a scoop of ice and a scoop of whale blubber in the blender. Praise the Lord, right? Culturally sensitive, understanding what it takes. Jesus studied it. Jesus lived it. Jesus began his ministry after 30 years. After 30 years. So let's just conclude at verse 18. That was verse 14. John chapter 1, verse 18. No one has ever seen God, the only God who is at the Father's side. He has made him known. Now, we all understand what this means. Without Jesus becoming a man, there would be no way for us to truly understand who the Father is. We have to see him in the Son, Jesus. So let's take a 5-minute break. When we come back, we're going to discuss these verses together in group. So let's come back. It's 8 o'clock. Let's come back at 8:05.